A Story of a Wedding Tour is a short story by Margaret Oliphant, a Scottish writer famous for themes of domestic realism and depiction of life in small towns. A Story of a Wedding Tour was published in 1898 in the short story collection titled A Widow's Tale and Other Stories. Set in the late 19th century, it is from the third-person anonymous perspective focused on the life of Janie, who marries Mr. Rosendale but shortly escapes him after a train mishap. Don't forget to share and subscribe. Janie, an orphan, was raised by the Midhursts, who treated her kindly out of obligation, not love. They sent her abroad to study French, German, and music, hoping she'd become a governess. With little personal income, Mr. Midhurst managed her finances. Returning to England, wealthy Mr. Rosendale in love proposed, her guardians relieved she'd escape governess life. Janie, craving affection, accepted, despite not loving him. Realizing Rosendale only cared for her beauty and not her, she regretted the marriage. After a week of marriage, on their supposed honeymoon and trip to Paris, Rosendale missed their train and was left at the station. Janie feared blame, though of no fault of her own, so she saw a chance to flee. With her modest savings of £100, she left him, boarding a train to a distant, undecided destination. On the train, Janie finds joy in the sight of a mother and baby. Arriving at the charming town of St. Honorat, she decides to settle there, where she later gives birth to a son, named John. 10 years pass by, with Janie settled in a comfortable, humble life with her son. She does odd jobs to survive, such as teaching English to children, giving music lessons and stitching. Meanwhile, Rosendale's life turns unpleasant and sickly due to unrestrained indulgence. Spotting Janie and their child at the St. Honorat station during a trip to Italy, he erupts in rage, alarming his valet. Stricken with fits, he worsens in health, as he screams for the train to stop immediately. Since she also recognized Rosendale through the train window, Janie fears for her son's safety, so she entrusts him to the care of the local priest while she steels herself to confront Rosendale. Struggling to devise a plan for their protection, Janie returns to the station, where she encounters Rosendale in critical condition. Despite her efforts to aid him, he succumbs the next day, leaving Janie grief-stricken and burdened with guilt, believing herself responsible for his demise. Let's analyze A Story of a Wedding Tour. The Midhurst's assistance to Janie stems solely from obligation rather than genuine affection, leaving her devoid of love or acceptance throughout her life and perpetually feeling like an outcast within her own family. She sees Rosendale's marriage proposal as an opportunity for someone to finally cherish and value her. Janie is initially enamored by the idea of being loved, overlooking the necessity of reciprocating Rosendale's affection. However, her disillusionment sets in swiftly just after a week of marriage, realizing her marriage lacks the depth she craved. Janie would have been very well pleased to put up with that. But to be petted like a little lapdog and then left as a lapdog is, to be quiet and not to trouble in the intervals of petting, was to the poor little girl, unaccustomed to love and athirst for it, who had hoped to be loved, and to find a companion to whom she would be truly dear, a disenchantment and disappointment which was almost more than flesh and blood could bear. Fearing continued subjugation and neglect, she flees. Janie knew by instinct that though it was in no way her fault, her husband would wreak his vengeance upon her even for being left behind by the train. And there would be no forgiveness for her if he once laid hands upon her. After the birth of her son, she finds solace and happiness in her newfound independence. Janie embodies the plight of oppressed women of her era, valued solely for superficial traits rather than recognized as individuals with emotions and desires. Janie, typically reserved, surprises herself and others with her bold decision to depart, displaying remarkable courage despite the looming threat of punishment if discovered. Despite the uncertainty of a foreign land and her limited funds, she embraces the adventure ahead with anticipation, seizing control of her life. Establishing herself in St. Honorat, she earns her livelihood independently and cares for her son, showcasing strength and capability. All her life, she was under the control of her guardians who did not genuinely love her, and after her marriage, she became under the control of a man who again did not genuinely love her. She had never taken any initiative, and since her marriage had been reduced to such a state of complete dependence on her husband's wishes and plans that she had not attempted the smallest step on her own impulse. Janie breaks free from societal norms without shame, embracing independence and happiness on her terms. Janie's resilience without reliance on her husband, especially in a male-dominated environment in a foreign nation, challenges the notion of female dependence on men. Mr. Rosendale's affection for Janie is superficial, centered solely on her physical appearance rather than genuine love for her as a person. To him, she is akin to a possession or a pet, admired at his whim but otherwise disregarded. Her desires and thoughts hold no significance to him. As long as his desires are fulfilled, he remains content. Rosendale's life of indulgence and self-centeredness leads to a tragic demise, serving as a blunt reminder of the dire consequences of utter abandonment of self-indulgence and rude comfort and unchecked desire. He had the air of a man who had indulged himself much and all his inclinations, had loved good living and all the joys of the flesh, had denied himself nothing, and was now paying the penalties. Despite her solitude for a decade, Janie remains loyal to her marital vows, refraining from seeking companionship elsewhere. Despite Rosendale's past mistreatment and the serious threats he posed to her and John, Janie feels a sense of responsibility towards him as he lies dying at the train station. For the first time, she experiences guilt for abandoning him, setting aside her grievances. Acting out of goodwill and respect, Janie ensures that arrangements are made properly following Rosendale's passing, acknowledging him as her husband despite their strained relationship. In that critical moment, her concerns for her son's safety fade as she prioritizes her duty to her husband. Demonstrating both maternal love and resilience, Janie strives to raise her son independently, exemplifying strength and determination.